Good morning. I'm Mr. Bosalai. I will be your lecturer for the next couple of weeks as we go through the semester. Um, as we go through, we will be going through looking at some various tools and materials that we'll be using for our practical exercise. To begin, we must always make sure we have some safety. So we put on our safety, our coat, and we can always make sure we have our glove. Alright, so then we can begin. Alright. However, I'm going to be first here we have two different leak detectors. These are electronic detectors, right? So if we have a leak in our air conditioning system, to be able to detect where you have that leak. These are one of our common tools that are used in refrigeration. These are tube cutters of different sizes, and I'll show you the copper tube in a little while. These are two portable torches that we use in terms of, we call them blow torch, turbo torches, and we use map gas to be able to light it up. This is a hand tool socket set, which also has some screwdriver features. Here we have the electronic thermometer, which would be able to take the readings on your air conditioning system. You want to be able to see what the reading is, because it's always important to know what your temperature is, because you should not be using your hand to be able to indicate what temperature that you have there. Your thermometer is what will give you the reading. Out here we have two different sets of flaring tools. These are used to perform flares and swedging. Later on we will have a video on this as to how we go through using these tools. Out here we have what is called a charging scale. This scale is used to be able to charge your refrigerant. In past we were using an ordinary scale where we would have to measure the refrigerant tank beforehand, and then after we would then have to be able to measure again at the end to determine how much refrigerant was used. However, with this scale, which is an electronic scale, we would just have to take our gauge, connect it to the system, connect it to the scale, and program the scale for the amount of refrigerant. So if we want 2 grams, we program 2 grams, and the scale will automatically take the 2 grams of refrigerant from the refrigerant tank and put it into the refrigeration system. So this makes life a lot easier for us. This here is what is called a micron gauge. It's an electronic micron gauge. It helps us to be able to determine the level at which our vacuum has gone, to be able to establish if we have the accurate vacuum, and then we know our system is in good order. This here is an amp probe. It's a multimeter at the same time, because you can measure amperage, you can measure voltage, you can measure current with this. Very important tool. And also temperature. One of our very important pieces of tools, our compound gauge. This is often used by most of our refrigeration technicians. It's a must tool, because without the gauge readings, you don't know what your pressure is, and in refrigeration and air conditioning, it's all about pressure and temperature. There's that pressure-temperature relationship, and you need to know how to read your gauges in order to be able to determine if you have the right pressure in the system in order to give the temperature that you want. Out here we have what is called our nitrogen tank. Very important in the use when soldering. No longer can we take a chance and solder and not clear the lines with nitrogen. This is a must, and as we go along, we'll be explaining for the teeth. This here is what we call a dot tank. It's a tank which is used when we're recovering refrigerant in order to store it in this tank. This here is a recovery machine. This machine is attached to your refrigeration system, and with this you're able to be able to take the refrigerant out from the system and store it in this tank. We have here our vacuum pump, which is used in order to be able to evacuate the system. Now, the word vacuum does not mean that it is sucking the refrigerant. What it's actually doing is creating a very low pressure, actually a negative pressure, which allows the moisture that would be in the refrigeration system to begin to vaporize, meaning that it's actually boiling in the system. As a result, it will then come out of the pump, and then you have the system free of moisture. This here is what is called an identifier. As you would have learned, there are a number of problems that we've been faced with our refrigerants in the past, and one of those were R12, which is a CFC, having contained chlorine. And in order to identify the various refrigerants, or even in case where you have a tank, to know exactly what refrigerant is in there, what percentage of a refrigerant is in a particular tank, this identifier, electronic as it is, will be able to identify the refrigerants in the tank or in the refrigeration system and give you a reading so you know what you're working with. Very important tool. As you will see, this is one of our air condition units. It's a split air condition unit. Alright, but we will come across here. So this is a complete installation here where we will install this unit. Right? We have our filters and the air condition connected to the pipes. But this we will be going through in a separate lesson.